Hey, what is going on, guys? Today we're taking a look at the Untold Tales of Spider-Man Omnibus, so I hope you're in the mood for some web-slinging action. This omnibus is still in print, I believe. I just picked it up recently from In-Stock Trades because they had a great sale going on there. I think it was going for like 40 bucks or even less, really. So you might want to check if you're interested to see if it's still there or at any of the other distribution sites. So, without further ado, let's take a look at the book. Alright, per usual, the first thing we do is take a look at the spine, and I really enjoy it on this book. I think it looks great against the black background, the Spider-Man red and blue popping towards us. Good job on this one, Marvel. And moving on to the cover, this is the one that I went with. I personally like those sort of gymnastic, dynamic Spider-Man poses, and it's fun when he's swinging towards you, so of course I picked this one. And this is my preference for the back of books when they show all of the contents that are collected in here, the covers, I mean, and it just works really well. It gives you a nice comprehensive view of what's in the book. Alright, so let's crack into the Untold Tales of Spider-Man. So what does this collect? Well, this collects Amazing Fantasy, number 16 through 18. We'll talk about that in a second. Untold Tales of Spider-Man, number 1 through 25, Annual 96-97, and material from Amazing Spider-Man Annual number 37. Also, Untold Tales of Spider-Man Strange Encounters in there too. So if you're someone who is familiar with the character of Spider-Man and knows some of his history, you probably already know that he made his first appearance in Amazing Fantasy number 15, and then that book was canceled. It was gone, it was donezo. And then he continued on in his own series, Amazing Spider-Man, and that went on to have a great amount of longevity to it and be very popular, as we all know today. So 33 years later, after that Amazing Fantasy number 15, they were like, hey, wouldn't it be kind of fun if we just, continued that and we just told, what happens immediately after that, and it's sort of like these really, really early moments of Peter Parker. And so they did that. And that's what we get at the start of this omnibus, and there's some interesting stuff in there, I suppose, like there's Uncle Ben's funeral and whatnot, which also I'm sure we've seen at some point else through Spider-Man history in a flashback or something, but they also did it here. We also get his first encounter with another super powerful type hero being, although I guess they're really a vigilante and not quite a hero, because as Peter Parker learns, his sort of responsibilities don't necessarily align with that person's responsibilities when it comes to helping people out and being someone who keeps the streets of New York safe. But to me, the Amazing Fantasy extra issues in here that we start with are sort of just like a nice little extra thing to have in this book. But I think the real prize of this book and the real pitch for why you should pick up this book if you're a big Spider-Man fan is these actual untold tales of Spider-Man stories. First of all, the artwork here is super colorful and amazing, and it seems like a sort of modernized, classic, old-school Spider-Man style, which sounds contradictive probably, but it does its job, and it reels me, and I really like it. So what is this, though? Well, these are the lost tales of Peter Parker's early days of being our favorite neighborhood web-slinger. They are stories that are in between the original issues or even in between scenes in the original issues of The Amazing Spider-Man. So to compare it to something else, if you're maybe an X-Men fan but not a Spider-Man fan, this is like the classic X-Men stories, And Kurt Busiek does most of the writing work in here, and it's an exercise in creative writing because he's got such tight confines to work with here to create new stories. And, frankly, he knocks it out of the park with that. Dude certainly did his Spider-Man homework, and I'm a huge fan of Kurt Busiek's writing anyway. I love his work on the Iron Man omnibuses that were released also. He's a really word-heavy writer, but I like that. It's a lot of prose, very poetic, very well done. I think he captures characters very well. So I would always recommend checking out Kurt Busiek work, and I think there's a reason he's such a notable name in comic books, right? But this book does really well to capture just the style of the Silver Age as well, without being dampered by it, which is a bit of a tight balancing act, but it works really well. Like I said, it's the art and the writing. And really, I think they had the idea to do this because probably at the time, Spider-Man was starting to get a little convoluted, maybe like Clone Saga stuff or whatnot was going on, and they wanted to go back to basics. They wanted to go to poor man student Peter Parker, who was just trying to balance this sort of poverty-stricken student, social outcast, superhero lifestyle, and it's very fun, and it works, and they did it within continuity, which is really impressive, like I said. And the book, I think, if you've got the Amazing Spider-Man Omnibus Volume 1 in your collection, will act as this kind of great companion piece. But even if you aren't 100% sure on the context of those original stories, I think the information you mostly need is in these stories. They're well written, the characters are very lively and fleshed out, a lot more so in some instances, and it's still worth it. They're kind of, in a way, villain of the week type stories, but there is also continuity to it as it's moving forward through the Spider-Man timeline. So you do see the other aspects of Peter Parker's life as they start to evolve and as he starts to come into himself as a superhero. A big win in this book, though, for me, is that it attempts to do a lot of fleshing out of some characters, and, some of that it does really well, and some things it scratches the surface. But, for example, I enjoyed that we got to see some deeper perspective into why some bullies were such jerks at this time to Peter Parker, and, he's a party that witnesses that, and if you're curious, essentially, the answer is daddy issues. But that's me giving you a surface level description. Read it yourself if you'd like to learn more about that, and I do think this is worth a read. It's fun, a bit carefree, but still is respectful to the classic stories and the original characterizations. It also does a lot for characters like Betty Brant, who, from my memory of reading old school Spider-Man, Betty Brant wasn't fleshed out that much, but here we get a lot more insight into her personality and what she's like as a person, and it's very nice, and I like to see her interactions with Peter Parker, and it made me a bit of a Betty Brant fan. There also happens to be, for you J. Jonah Jameson lovers out there, there's some awesome JJJ stories in here. And there was this one story, and there's a line he delivered that stuck with me a bit, and it was, "If Spider-Man is a hero, what does it make me?" And I thought his denial of Spider-Man's heroship here in this simple line was a really quick and easy way to show his character, and it was powerful in a way, and that's just the kind of, awesome dialogue bombs that Kurt Busiek will drop on you at times. As far as villains go, he fights a bunch of random villains that I've never heard of before, and I think Kurt Busiek may have made up for this run at times. But, I'm not as super well-versed in Spider-Man as I am in X-Men. Don't get me wrong, I did start reading comics mostly with Spider-Man, but that also has sort of a very convoluted history of the character. So, some of them I didn't recognize, but then, of course, there are other ones that are classic, like Sandman, the Lizard, Vulture, all those guys are in here and make appearances as well. Really fantastic and interesting utilization of a Mary Jane story in here too, and you're probably wondering well, this seems like Mary Jane wasn't involved yet, and you are correct, but you'll have to read it and find out. It's fascinating, and it just shows the length of the creativity that Kurt Busiek goes to in here. I recommend picking this one up if you're a Spider-Man fan, guys. I found it really interesting personally, and I think you will too. Also, they've got a how-to-follow guide in the back if you want to be super nerdy like I am sometimes. Nothing wrong with that, and we all are here. And you want to read an original, and you want to read this one, an original, this one, and so on and so forth. Alright guys, but thank you for watching. Please enjoy the rest of your day, and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more videos.